Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave here. Today I'm talking about the movie Argylle. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the movie yet and you are concerned about spoilers, I suggest you go and watch the movie first before you watch this review. So Argylle is Matthew Vaughn's latest film. It's about a writer who writes about a spy who ends up encountering spies in her real life. So as far as what I liked about the movie, overall the cast is great. I really like Bryce Dallas Howard. Sam Rockwell is always great. And of course, he always dances, and he dances a lot in this. So if you like to watch Sam Rockwell dancing, then great, it's great for that. Bryan Cranston, of course, always great as well, doing a really good job of being sort of a bad guy and also playing a character who seems to be a good guy or pretends to be a good guy. So you get to see a little bit of variety from his performance there. Catherine O'Hara, always fun. Henry Cavill, of course, is great. I like Sofia Boutella, who's not on the poster there. Dua Lipa, she's only in it for about 5 minutes, but she's good enough in the 5 minutes she's in it. I like John Cena, Ariana DeBose. Sam Jackson's always good. I don't know why I'm gesturing. He's not in the poster either. Rob Delaney's fun. Richard E. Grant shows up at some point. So like a ton of people. I feel like almost everyone in this movie is like, oh, I recognize that person. Oh, I've seen that person before. So that's cool. I think it's a really fun premise. The idea of a writer, someone who writes about spies, encountering spies in real life and stuff. Sort of an idea I've seen before. Like maybe Stranger Than Fiction kind of had a similar idea, or John Candy had that movie, Delirious. It was kind of about a writer who's, kind of fantasy started to come to life or something, or at least he started. Either way, it's a fun enough idea and it's an interesting one. I even feel like Sam Rockwell did kind of a similar movie, or he did some movie where he was a spy a couple years ago with Anna Kendrick, I think. Either way, it's a fun premise, it's a fun idea, and I think it's a fun movie. It's a kind of movie like if you saw it on a plane or something like that, or if you just put it on when you had like friends or family over and you weren't really watching it, and you were just kind of like talking and not really paying attention, and you just kind of look up, oh, well, what's going on? Oh, they're ice skating out. Okay, that's fun. Okay, cool. Like, yeah, it's all right. There's some decent fight choreography in there as well. So, yeah, it's yeah. As far as what I didn't like about it, I didn't really like a lot of the action scenes. A lot of it was just shot a little too close for me and a little too shaky cam, which Matthew Vaughn has done a fair amount of action scenes, and he's usually does some good stuff. A lot of times, the Kingsman movies that he did will have a really cool action scene where like they do a really long oneer, or like they do something kind of interesting. They had the one thing in the car, I think, in the second Kingsman movie, and there was one in the first one as well. Yeah, this one I feel like didn't really have anything like that, or maybe there was, but I just missed it. I don't know. There was a whole ice skating thing, I guess, but I didn't really like that scene. I thought it was kind of dumb, honestly, mostly because you can't just stick knives and choose and make ice skates. I mean, if she would have done that and didn't immediately fallen over, that would have been funny. But also, like, it wouldn't work on oil anyway. That's not how oil works. It's like basic physics. I don't know. I don't know. And it seemed like it could have been a fun enough premise, ice skating with like a machine gun or whatever, semi-automatic rifle, whatever you want to call it, as cool. I mean, it's a fun idea, but just the way they set it up was kind of silly to me, and just too silly and ridiculous. And to me, a lot of the CGI was pretty bad too. Like at the beginning, they did some stuff with Argylle, and this. He was driving a Jeep or some kind of car, and it looked okay, but a little bad, like a little cartoony, a little silly. And I'm like, hey, you know what? It's fine. It's sort of a fantasy. She's imagining it. It doesn't have to look great. But throughout the rest of the movie too, like it's just the CGI was pretty bad. Like that ice skating scene, I think all the oil was CGI, or at least most of it looked like it was. And I can understand why you would. It's a lot easier to clean up. It's a lot easier to deal with. The actors don't have to deal with it. And she had like a little spot of oil on her dress. I'm like, there would be oil splashed all over the place if you were actually doing that. And you also can't do that. That's not how oil works. Um, I don't know. There's this thing where they're like winking at each other that was just super cringy and lame to me. Really, none of the jokes worked for me at all. I will say though, there was one guy in the theater who was laughing his ass off. Like, and maybe it was a couple guys, but I think it was just one guy who just thought everything in this movie was hilarious. So maybe it's just me. I don't know. I wasn't in a bad mood or anything when I saw it. I was ready for it. I like Matthew Vaughn, but yeah, just a lot of it didn't work for me. It was just a little too silly, a little too convoluted. There was a lot of twists. There was a lot of like, oh, it turns out, you're actually a spy and you have amnesia. And, this guy who's pretending to be your dad is actually the head of the secret evil spy organization. And Catherine O'Hara has a bad British accent. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of stupid and just too long. Honestly, moved over 2 hours. Didn't need to be. In some ways, it felt like a TV show or like a pilot for a TV show, kind of like I don't know, like Chuck or something like that, maybe. And I feel like maybe if it was a TV show, I would give it a little more leeway with kind of the silliness of it. but it just, I don't know, just, it felt like something like a youth pastor would make, or like a youth pastor would put on for the kids. Like, hey kids, here's a nice family friendly movie with, a lot of blood and violence, I guess, but no nudity and no swearing and stuff. Like, that's what really stuck out to me. There's a scene where she's like, this is BS. And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, this movie PG-13. I didn't even look at it. I assume it is PG or PG-13. No one says BS in real life unless, again, you're like a youth pastor or a kid at church camp or something. Like, just say bullshit. What are you doing? Like, this is ridiculous. So that just kind of, it always takes me out of it when someone does that, or like they're like, oh, cut the crap, or like, I don't know. Whenever someone like intentionally edits themselves, especially for TV, it always takes me out of it because I'm like, people don't talk that way. I'm aware I'm watching a TV show now, so that just bothered me. It just seemed very out of touch too. Just I don't know, just like it was made by, I don't know how old Matthew Vaughn is. He's not that old. I think he's probably in his 50s, I would guess. But it seems like it was made by someone who's like 80, who was like, this is what the kids like these days. I don't know. It just really didn't work for me. There's a scene at the end where they're like dancing and smiling, and like they look goofy as hell, especially Bryce Dallas Howard, because they've got like these masks on. They're just like smiling all like goofy and shit. And it was hard to watch for me, honestly. I think it would have been interesting if they would have done something where, like, in her novels, stuff was a little more fantastical, and then in real life, things are a little more grounded and based in reality, and you kind of see stuff. Like maybe she did try to do the ice skating thing and it didn't work, and then Sam Rockwell's like, "What are you doing? That's not how oil works. Like, come on." But I don't know, and I guess that wouldn't really work for the twist that she's also secretly a spy who has amnesia. But like the amnesia thing really kind of just bothered me too, just because I don't know. I feel like it's just something that's done a lot. I know amnesia is a real thing and it does happen occasionally, but I don't think it happens nearly as often as screenwriters seem to use it. It's like quicksand. It's one of those things you always hear about in movies and TV shows, but like I don't think I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I think it's pretty rare, and I don't think it works that way. So yeah, that just kind of bothered me, and also the Beatles song in there bothered me because they start playing it, and I'm like, okay, this is that new Beatles song that just came out like last year. There's a big thing about it because it's the first Beatles song that's come out in like whatever, how long, 30 years or whatever. I don't know, 40 years. But either way, I'm like, okay, this is like, and then they're like, well, this was our song 5 years ago. And I'm like, that song didn't come out 5 years ago, unless this movie takes place in 2028 or something. Like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. And then also there's a post-credit scene or mid-credit scene where they reveal that this is all taking place in the Kingsman universe, which, okay, that's fine, I guess, but like Samuel L. Jackson played a character in the Kingsman universe. So like, wouldn't people be like, hey, isn't it weird that the villain from that Kingsman movie, The Golden Circle or whatever, looks a lot like the guy who used to be the head of the CIA? Isn't that weird? Or same thing with Sofia Boutella. She's in both of them too. Like, when people like, hey, isn't it weird that the keeper looks a lot like that woman that had the prosthetic limbs in the Kingsman movie? Like, I don't know, just stuff like that. I'm just like, well, I guess it's fine. Some people look alike, but it just seemed a little weird to me where I'm like, well, you can't do that because a lot of the people from those Kingsman movies show up and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that guy was in, one of those, or she was in one of those. That makes sense. But like, I'm like, what do you, it's just confusing to me, I guess. So yeah, movie is directed by Matthew Vaughn. Like I said, he did all the Kingsman movies, Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, Stardust, some other stuff. It was written by Jason Fuchs, who was one of the writers, I think, on Wonder Woman, Pan, and Ice Age Continental Drift, which I don't know which one that is. It's the one that came out in 2012, I think. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I like most of Matthew Vaughn's stuff, but this to me just seemed a little more tame. And most of the other Kingsman movies, for example, had some kind of sexuality and stuff. Not that I need that exactly, but this, in comparison, seemed just very sanitized and very like safe and I don't know, dull, I guess. Uh, Rotten Tomatoes on this one. So it's funny, when I first saw it, I looked it up and I saw the critic score was 34%. I watched it like Friday morning, so there wasn't an audience score yet because it hadn't come out for audiences yet. And I'm surprised, not that surprised to learn that it's 70% for audiences. So audiences seem to like this, critics not as much. And I understand that because I actually talked to a couple friends who saw it and they both liked it. And I was like, really? They're like, yeah, it was fun and silly. And I'm like, and I felt like a jerk for being like, I thought it was terrible. I thought it was cringy and embarrassing and just like probably the worst movie of the year so far that I've seen. And very well has a good chance to be the worst movie of the year overall. I know it's still early, but it's not very good. Budget on this one is $200 million, I guess, or at least Apple paid $200 million for the rights to it. Budget may have been even more then. I don't exactly know how that works. I assume what happens is they pitch it to Apple and then Apple buys it and then they use that $200 million to make the movie, I would assume. But I don't know. Variety, I think, or Hollywood Reporter then theorized the budget was probably about 250 million. Matthew Vaughn said no, unless it was a 5-hour CGI fest. So I don't know what the budget is, but we do know that Apple paid $200 million for it at least. So far, the box office made $35.3 million. 18 million of that was domestic. It was, projected to make 15 to 20, so right about what they expected out of it. It's going to need to make, $400 or $500 million to break even, though. So it's going to be rough for it, but it is made by Apple TV, so I assume they'll put it on their streaming service at some point. I don't know how that works. And it honestly feels like an Apple TV kind of movie in some ways. So yeah, I didn't like this movie very much, unfortunately. And maybe I'm just being a little too harsh on it. I'm looking back, I'm like, maybe there was some fun stuff to it, but I don't know. It just kind of just really didn't work for me. So I think score for me is going to be a 5 out of 10. I mean, yeah, I feel like it had a lot of potential and it could have been good. And I wanted to like it. I like the people involved. If they wanted to make an Archer movie with Henry Cavill as Archer, hey man, I'm down for it. But yeah, this movie didn't work for me. So yeah, 5 out of 10, that's my score. But if you saw the movie, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great night, and I will see you here again next week.